All right, the lady has spoken. So I call to order this resumption of the meeting of the Budget Committee for Hood River County for fiscal year 26-27. Are there any additions to or deletions from the agenda?
Just to make sure it's clear, so I provided this spreadsheet for discussion, and I'd like to speak to it when it's appropriate.
I'm thinking I'll make that item 4.5.
Whatever works.
Let me see. Yeah, because that's prior to approval of the budget. Thanks,
Good idea.
Arthur. Glide path. All right. Is there anyone in the room who'd like to give public comment today?
Anyone online?
Anyone online? Okay, great. The minutes from the April 30th session. Did those come in the packet?
They're there.
Otherwise, I didn't scroll down. Okay. I entertain a motion to approve the April 30th meeting minutes.
I would make a motion, but I do have a comment I want to make.
Okay.
Second the motion.
Okay. Discussion?
I maybe it's just funny, but it said that I expressed concern about PERS rates. And I don't think that's what I intended to do. I was simply asking a question about PERS rates. I'm quite aware that PERS rates are what PERS rates are. And so the emotion imputed there did not happen, but.
Do you want to request a correction?
No, I just wanted
Okay.
to make a statement.
Okay. Any other discussion about the minutes? Okay. Anyone opposed to approving the minutes? Passed unanimously. All right. So item 4.5, glide paths.
Can you do pass meeting May 7th? It's not on the agenda.
I
don't believe the May 7th
don't think they're in the
minutes
packet.
were in the
I didn't see them. Yeah. Thanks for asking. So we'll see those next year when we reconvene. Okay, thank you. So glide paths, Arthur.
Okay, so we had a discussion last meeting about how much of the reserves we're comfortable spending. And I talked a bit about the concept of a glide path to allow us to, in a controlled manner, get to the result that we want to get to, which sounds like we want to make some attempts to increase revenues before we start cutting expenses more. And so I thought it'd be helpful to do just to lay out some of the very simple math. I haven't done anything particularly sophisticated here, but it will force us into a discussion about a specific element of revenue that I do want to chat about for a minute. So all I did on this sheet, so it's this spreadsheety thing that each of you had with 3 black boxes on it. And what I looked at is the 3 different scenarios. One is what is the proposed budget today due to the reserves? The second is what does it look like with a 1-year glide path? In other words, that we're going to take 1 year to get down to the recommended reserve level, and then if, at that point, if we haven't identified and put in place additional revenues, then next year's budget, we have some serious cutting to be doing. And the second option is a 2-year glide path, which basically takes the spend down of the reserves and puts it into a 2-year model. And so if you look at this, we start with $5.8 million general fund balance this year, which is what staff has told us that they're expecting. And so we can take that at face value. And the proposed budget that we have before us spends $3,875,000 of that balance down, and at the end there's a balance of $1,925,000. which is below the $3 million target, $3 million being 15% of the operating of the, what was the proper term? I wrote it down here, operational expenditures. So Clayton did a really nice graph for a really nice presentation for us, showing us exactly which numbers he plucks out of the budget to determine what that number is, but that number is roughly 20 million, which is a nice round number, and 15% of 20 million is $3 million. So so the assumption that I use is that this year the target ending fund balance is 3 million. Next year it's 3 million plus 5%, and the following year it's 3 million plus 10%. Those are, I just made up the number 5%. It doesn't make that much of a difference, and none of these numbers are razor sharp. They don't need to be, but that's the general idea of what's going on here. And it's important, though, to discuss the assumptions. So number one is the assumption is that 15% is the correct number, and that's what we've been working with. Number two is that the contingency is unlikely to be spent because the budgeting principles are conservative. If instead, if, for example, we push staff and staff starts cutting out a bunch of things, which mean that they don't have any money departmentally available to respond to like a failed heating system or something like that, then they're going to come and take something out of contingency. So we really haven't saved anything. If we do that, we're simply moving the risk from a departmental budget into the contingency column. So I'm presuming that that we can include the contingency plus the unappropriated ending fund balance and define that as a reserve. Number three, I think I already said that that number is based on $20 million operational expenditures this year, increased by 5% annually. Like I said, I made up the number 5%, but it just because the math was easy. I like things I can do in my head. And number four is the one that's going to take a little discussion. That is that the timber interest is reserved for specific purposes. Purposes being stated as policy by the Board of Commissioners and is not generally available for general fund purposes. So we'll come back and talk about that in a minute. What I will say is I did not do the math right. I did not subtract the $475,000 of timber interest reserve fund money that is appropriated effectively in this, that's transferred into the general fund and then appropriated. That has the effect of basically hiding $475,000 of expenditures. That's one of the reasons I don't like doing it that way, but I'll talk about that in a minute. And then number five is that just explaining what a glide path is. The glide path assumes that you're approaching, the general fund is approaching its 15% minimum end of year balance in a linear manner. And at the end of the glide path, you either need additional revenues or reduced expenditures. So then the following year, you'll be able to maintain the targeted ending fund reserve level. So to talk about the timber interest, sorry, I have to pull up a different thing here. And so we've talked about this a little bit so far, and staff thankfully dug up I'm not sure I call it policy, but the rules about who gets to spend it from the administrative code. The administrative code says that the budget committee can authorize the finance director to transfer monies from the timber interest reserve fund into the general fund. It doesn't state why, and it doesn't state anything other than authorization comes from the budget committee and is given to staff. Now, I've had discussions with previous commissioners and with previous administrators, as has Allison, and we've gotten a story of the general understanding that in the recent decade, it's been understood that this fund provided a major opportunity for doing things like significant capital expenditures. And I've heard it described, especially ones that are available to build long-term sustainability. So things like purchasing additional timberland would mean that in some period of years, you're generating more revenue. So that's an example of what previous administrator and previous commissioners believe that money was being set aside for. At the same time, we see that it's repeatedly been spent. And I think if you look at the last graph I gave, the last chart I gave at the last meeting, I think there were only 2 years in the last 9 or 10 where it wasn't used simply to meet payroll.
You can see it on page 48, if you forgive me.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, yeah.
In the yellow book, you can see it on page 48. It's in the top, timber deposit interest to general fund.
Also, if you look at the graph I gave you last week, which have. If you look at the graph in the chart, there's actually history for the last 9 years.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's been spent. I think I would have my own graph here, but I don't. I think
Great.
it's not super important.
Okay.
Let me just
Okay.
move into the discussion, points that I think are important. So here are my arguments against using the timber interest fund as just a general fund.
If I can ask a little bit of background there.
Yeah.
So the fact that this is an administrative code, that's Hood River County's administrative code, so that's sort of like our rules for ourselves.
Correct.
Does the state weigh in on that or anyone outside of Hood River County?
This is our rules for
Okay,
ourselves.
and who makes the rules?
These
for
are
the-
adopted by the Board of Commissioners.
Okay, so this is the Board of Commissioners rules.
Are they adopted
For
by
how we're gonna
resolution
do
or
stuff.
ordinance?
These have been around so long, we would have to go back and look at
Okay.
the mechanism. My assumption is by resolution.
There's a charter review committee that's a resolution, right? And then, the admin code is reviewed by BOC that's by resolution, I think, but I don't know if that specific one we ever found a resolution. I think we've all looked for that and been hopeful to find and never did. The best we found is in the admin code.
Okay,
So it can be typical to have a fund policy for the fund itself.
Right.
And so that was what was being described by Clayton. This is the only reference.
that's what you found. And so these could be changed by the commission
Mhm.
in the
By
future.
resolution, which
By
is-
resolution.
This is a vote of majority of the bar.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so we're gonna like talk about how is this budget committee gonna make recommendations, and then it sort of falls to the Board of Commissioners if you all want to get more clear.
Well,
It's the commissioners who would need to do that.
Current policy states that this group has the authority to
Move the money
move the money.
Yep.
And to direct staff to move the
Right.
money.
through the vehicle of the budget.
Right. Now,
Basically, it seems like,
the Board
okay,
of Commissioners has the authority to change that policy.
exactly.
And I'm going to be requesting that the Board of Commissioners discuss this at the Monday meeting.
Yep.
That we're having to come up with a clearer fund, a
Yep.
clearer policy for the reasons I'm going
Okay,
to state.
perfect.
And then I'll explain how it affects all of this.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted us to understand whose rules are we now deciding to operate within?
Right,
Okay,
so
go ahead, Arthur.
hopefully this board, the budget committee, would take into consideration, sort of the expressed emotions on this, on the Board of Commissioners members, because they may be discussing on Monday, but we'll see where the discussion goes. I haven't, talked to the, I've spoken with Ed about this, I haven't spoken with anyone else, so
Okay,
we'll see where
thank you.
that goes.
Go ahead.
So, here are my concerns. Number one is this is a large and volatile revenue source. Which means, so I thought, I looked back in history and I saw that least generally that it had gone from 78,000 in 1 year. I can't explain that at all, to 600,000 in another year. And Clayton says that the average has been higher than that. What number did you come up with?
I don't think anybody asked me for a specific number. So
Oh, I'm sorry, Sherry told me that you had.
I did provide her all this stuff before you guys were discussing it, and the policy says the average interest earnings. So I took the average as far back as Cassell goes, which is 8 years. Cassell goes back. And that average for an 8-year average is 505,000.
Okay,
And then I decreased that to 5 years and 3 years because the policy is not clear of what is the average.
yeah,
And that number grows because, like you were just talking about, big swings. 2025 had a abnormally large number, so the last. If you make the average smaller, the number gets bigger because
Okay.
recently. it's become good.
So when I provided that chart last meeting, I looked at the transfers in and out of that fund for the last 10 years. And I saw a range from 78, like I said, from 78,000, which I asked Sherry how that could even be, because that made no sense to have interest that low. All I can imagine is that they were using just basic checking account interest rates or something, and that they switched to LGIP at some point. But the real, and remember, there were periods where interest rates were well under 1%. So the argument is, if we're using this to support positions, which is really what most of our budget does, it can go from supporting one position to supporting 6 positions between 2 years. So it's as a budget balancing tool, simply using this interest straight into the general fund is not a very stable or very sustainable practice. Number two, the way it's been used is not very transparent at all. In fact, the fact is I made a mistake in my math, because even though I'm writing something about the subject, I forgot to go back and say, okay, wait, this money comes from this special column over here, so that has to be added back in. And I would guess that most of us didn't realize that when the budget comes to us balanced and the ending fund balance is what we expect, you don't think, oh, wait a minute, how much of that came out of this reserve, this other reserve fund that was just transferred into to buoy the balance. So it's not transparent. Number three, the policy makes it clear that it's special, but it doesn't specify, it only specifies how it can be accessed, not why. So I think that it would be a good idea for us to put in writing in the administrative code of why, to explain what are the circumstances that we think are appropriate for using these funds for general fund purposes. Without a policy, there are a whole bunch of negatives in this sentence. So follow me with this. The lack of a policy makes it impossible not to spend this money to avoid paying for one more year. I would defy you to find a budget committee that would look at this and say, we don't have to address this lack of revenue to cover these positions this year, because there's still some cash left in the timber fund. So effectively, that's what the county was doing 10 years ago when they first started to talk about the operating levy, and every year they would just go in and scoop out some money from that fund and say, okay, we can go one more year. Okay, we can go one more year. And that's just the most unsustainable way of budgeting. It's really hard to have the discipline not to do that. And effectively, it feels to me like we have a fund which has the opportunity to develop a significant revenue, which can be used for important purposes, but instead we're basically eating our seed corn. In this case, is that the right phrase?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I would suggest it's a unique opportunity to provide a special fund which can be used for significant capital investments or other one-time needs, especially ones which contribute to long-term sustainability. Example, a timber lot for future production or a one-time cost of reorganization. Not something that should be used for annual payroll. And right now we're using it to meet our payroll, and I think that that's kind of an unhealthy thing to do. So what I would like to do is I would like to discuss it on Monday at the Board of Commissioners meeting, and I would like to hear what other people think about whether or not we should use that to balance the budget that we're talking about today. Now, I know that staff is you're going to present on the analysis you've done, Allison, right? So Allison's going to present the analysis, and I think that we can come to an answer either with or without this fund, and we can talk about it. Matt?
We got some discussion on this.
Sure.
So, thanks for the analysis. One thing I'm noticing looking at the proposed budget for this next year, we've got personnel costs, personnel services costs of about 20 million on a $50 million total expenditure, right? So about 40% of our overall expenses.
You're saying overall funds.
Yep, overall fund, right? So this timber interest deposit fund, yeah, if we're using 500,000 out of it this year. 40% of that should be, I view 40% of that goes toward personnel costs. Yes, we could reduce personnel costs and that would help by that amount, but, 500,000 is a drop in the $20 million bucket, right? And so I personally, I don't view all that money as going toward personnel. We could even say all of it's going toward debt service. It's the same.
Yeah, I don't think I agree with your math, though. You're looking at a number which includes a whole bunch of pass-throughs. If you just look at the general fund, you'll see what's the numbers like, it's something in the order of 80% of total expenditures is payroll. 70. It's pretty large.
Pass through something that number so much larger.
Okay, good. This is good. 'Cause I don't get.
Most of the money that we take in, most of the tax money we take in winds up being spent on payroll, right?
Okay.
Significantly more than half.
Is that
14
70-80%?
million out of 29.
14 out of 20.
70%.
Yeah.
70%. So, yeah, so it makes a lot more sense
Yeah.
now that, when we pull in 500,000 from the timber interest fund, at
400,000.
least 70-80% of that is to cover payroll. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
For that.
If I may, since I'm the one who put it in the budget, it's right up near 500,000. It's $400,000 sum.
475.
If you look at page 177, you'll see timber deposit interest fund. And the fund is projected to end this next budget year with 4.2, almost 4.3 million. And it ended
So what page are you on?
177.
177. So the fund has been used to balance in the past.
That gives the history on page 177. And the main body of the funds has grown. So in 2023, 2024, it was 2.8 million to current 3.7 million.
So I did ask to use it. We know that we need a revenue stream. We talk about it every year. My hope is that it'll become an actionable item soon. That part is out of my hands, but yes, there is almost 500,000 coming out, but the fund is healthy and it's growing.
So when I first joined the budget committee and Ed was on the budget committee then, that fund was plummeting towards the ground.
Policy.
And that's when 22-23 was written to control how quickly that fund was drawn down, because once that fund hit zero, you've given up the opportunity to use it for anything other than you basically each year we're spending some of it, not at the rate we're spending it now, but we still spend some of it each year. And the idea was that you're foregoing any possibility of using this for any long-term problems. You're simply using it as a short-term solution.
And while we didn't spell it out, my recollection of the intent was not for an ongoing fund for salaries in the general fund. That's not how, again, a number of years ago, how I recall what the general intent was. And I will say, we were heading down that path then as well. And I don't think any of us were in these seats. But the concept of a glide path, we use that very same concept then, hoping that there would be a revenue measure, which luckily there was, but not on the 10th one. So, for whatever that's worth.
Thank you.
So if you have remember the thing I gave you with the graphs on it, there are two columns on that chart. I can just read them to you. One is the ending balance of the timber interest fund, and the other is the transfer to the general fund. it covers the last 10 years. So in 2016, there was no transfer. In 2017, 200,000, then following year 500,000, then 721,000, 750,000, 411,000. That's when the levy was passed, and then the following 2 years it was zero. And then started going back up again, 344, then 75, then 375, and now 475.
Mhm.
That kind of gives you a feeling for how we're spending it. Now, the balance had been 2.7 million at the beginning of that period. It got down to as low as 1.4 million, and we've been building it back up. And not surprisingly, because interest rates have been much higher lately, and we haven't been drawing it at the rate that they were right before the levy.
In my budget message, I addressed the justification for utilizing it again at this level this year, and that was because of the 10-year average of timber harvest yielded a lower amount for general fund operations. So that amount was down by 142,000. And so utilizing this as an offset. And I would again just argue I'm fully supportive of maintaining that fund. This county has no place to go to for capital. We have done a very amazing job at developing alternative sources for timberland, including the new carbon fund that should begin materializing. For our facilities and our long-term needs of our buildings, there is not a consistent fund that has built up. So in this year's budget, when we look at additional cuts, when I met with all the department heads on Monday to come up with the memo that is before you, we're looking at cutting capital that is emergency replacement of HVAC. I mean, that's how lean we are getting. And so that from a fiduciary standpoint, having this reserve for capital, it makes perfect sense. It is just utilizing the good work that has been doing that we've been doing in managing our investments and taking that piece off the top, which is allowed by our current administrative code.
So I think the bottom line is that you've identified a set of savings, which with some modification could come pretty close to matching the one-year glide path box that I described.
Right.
And that's without using the timber money. But we have to discuss some of the details of that to get there. But it's not like I'm proposing a policy which we can't possibly do anything with at this late date. I think that we can both adopt a policy, as we discussed about the use of the timber fund, and we can conclude a balanced budget or a budget which doesn't spend the reserves down below the 15% the reserve level that we established.
Do you have a copy of this, of the memo from the meeting on Monday? I don't have a paper version of it.
The memo that was in the packet,
Yeah.
those in the packet for today. Do we have extra copy?
Yeah.
I can.
I can't get on the internet to access it either.
That would be really helpful.
So none of us can get on the internet to access it,
Oh,
unfortunately.
okay, all right.
Well, you don't have access?
No.
My hotspot too.
What'd you say? Yeah, I didn't.
My hotspot.
Yeah, I didn't bring my phone, so I can't use my hotspot.
You should be able to connect to my hotspot. I should ask me if I'll let you try to.
Quick copies of today's packet.
Sell,
The whole
sell
packet
access here.
for today,
Actually, I don't need the whole packet. I
just
think
the
just that
memo?
one memo is.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's what we're gonna talk about. All the stuff, the details on the e-schedule and stuff like that, I don't really,
What's that?
I don't think we need that.
I think they just meant this memo. It has memos on the bottom as well, so. Can you run this over? It'll take me a few minutes.
So bottom line, Allison's gonna explain this, but in the middle of her, I'll let her, she doesn't. don't want to explain your stuff for you.
Well,
I don't want to speak for you.
I just want to make, and I also want to clarify, so the 3.8 that you have for reserve spending in the first block is the 3.4 spend down plus the 475,000.
It is, but then in the second block, I did not do that same
Okay.
thing. So the amount where on the rightmost column where it says cuts from budget number 1,075,000, it's actually 1,525,000. Yeah, so I did go up a point there.
Okay. You sent it to the printer.
If we're not spending the timber money, then this number is 1,525,000.
Yep.
What's that?
1575.
So sometimes it's 525. It is
No, 475 and 75 is 550.
550.
Neither.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You already made it to your job here. In any case, so that is all to get to a precise number of 15%. I am not particularly religious about 15% being exactly 15%. And I think one way that I think about it is I'd much rather see the money stay in the timber fund and us spend contingency. But I don't think we will have to. But that seems to be a better budgetary practice to me. That using this, basically taking money out of the timber interest fund and then using it to be contingency and having a contingency go into the ending fund balance, which is kind of how I see the trail. I know each dollar is a dollar, but that's kind of how I see the trail. I just think a bad budgetary practice. And it's taking money out of a fund that we will need to use for some important purposes.
So maybe we could discuss that idea first, which is the sense of this committee, given that this committee is the decision maker. Does this committee support moving money from the timber deposit interest fund into the general fund
I would
this year?
ask that we let Allison do her presentation, because I think
Okay.
people will be a lot more comfortable when they see that we actually have a path to get there,
Okay,
instead of
Great.
talking about it as an academic exercise.
okay, great. So I think we maybe need to juggle swap 5 and 6 on the agenda.
Yeah, they should be. there.
Okay. I meant to say that before and I forgot. All right, so do you have anything else to add, Arthur, on what you were discussing? Shall we move into item 6, the revenue data for appraiser and the budget solutions?
And I think we had provided the revenue data for the appraiser position prior in that. I don't know that we had that again for today.
Yeah, I thought we talked about that last week. Didn't we resolve that?
I don't have nails.
If this is for the additional appraiser position, I did have another conversation with Brian Beebe offline, and he cannot guarantee or estimate revenue for the position. So I scratch anything I might have suggested last meeting.
Okay,
The expectation is that in getting the department staffed up, that you would generate $5 million in additional property tax. That is district-wide, and so the net to the county is 16% of that. And so that in essence pays for the appraiser position. So I think that's the dollar amount that you are looking for.
Well, we
but to
should
be clear,
The other entities
the-
have them help fund that position.
well, the
Well,
added revenue pays for the appraiser in the first year. But given that it's a multi-year glide path,
Right,
then in subsequent years,
Right.
that position is actually augmenting
Right.
revenue, but this year's budget impact
right.
could be neutral.
But wages and benefits outstrip 3% as well. Just
Yeah.
sort of, I got a handy spreadsheet just for that analysis. And
Yes.
we're talking about adding a second assessor, right? We already added the one last budget for reappraisals.
Correct, and there's not an additional position contemplated in this budget, so if the budget committee added a position, that would be an additional expense.
It was not requested by Brian.
Right, correct.
Sherry brought it up as, hey, what about this?
And I think
As
it
a
just came
thought
up from the
experiment.
committee as well.
Right, okay.
Um,
So just to be clear, it's,
Yeah,
yeah, that
thank you.
position is, the additional position is not.
Great.
Um,
Okay, so we've tucked off glide paths and revenue data for appraisal.
Yes,
And now we're on to item 6B.
yes.
Okay, cool.
So, after last week's budget committee meeting, and the discussion that occurred there, what was heard by staff in that meeting was $1 million. And so, on Monday of this week, I pulled all of the department directors together. And we went through all of the departments, additionally informed by the information provided to us, from Baker Tilly. And so this memo represents discussions with our leadership team. So lines 4 through 7 would look at revenues and expected timeline to materialize. So in the last quarter of the year, for property tax optimization, I put in 100,000. The expectation, we budget conservatively. So for example, in this year's budget, we're expecting more property taxes than we budgeted for. So that was a round number to add there. I like budgeting conservatively, and so that would be an expectation of shoring of that department and going through the process. This year, we do know that we have the waterfront urban renewal district aging out, and so that will provide an additional 81,000 in property taxes to the county. So I think that 100,000 is realistic.
Do we discuss each of these as we go through it? Because I think I hate to go through 8 things and then have to go back.
Okay.
So if I could just make a comment on that. In general, it's really important that revenues are budgeted conservatively, because the easiest mistake, the most common reason why cities and counties get in trouble is they overestimate revenues and then spend them. Right? In this case, I completely think that the recommendation staff is making is very reasonable. This is not that case.
Okay.
But I just wanted people to be alert to the fact that I would generally be very hesitant to say, well, let's bump up the revenue a little bit. That is, that is the less refuge of scoundrels, I think is there's a phrase, but that's not at all what's happening here.
And I have to say, in
You've seen it.
Washington State, it's very easy to bet on projects that are gonna generate one-time sales tax and then they go away. And so, yes, that can be true.
Yep.
Any other discussion on property tax optimization? Cool. Thank you all. Go ahead.
Okay. The second one, it was a conversation with all of those departments that have user fees. So permit fees, the special event permits, land use fees, environmental health permits. I put in there the dates of when we typically consider those the fee schedule. So in June and December, but the health department does look at those in October for application in January of the following year. In discussions with those departments, and again, this would have to be something that the Board of Commissioners would consider at their June meeting to start with, and in December meeting again to consider those increases. But that could generate $145,000 in revenues. And I have an asterisk below based on the departments that identified those increases. So at this point, we didn't include anything for health. They just increased their rates and wanted to see how those were faring as they headed into this year and consider those again in October. The next line item.
If I could just ask on that one, so I think you said a large chunk of that was increasing the fees for parking fees in Post Canyon. Do you know what that number is?
So on the bottom of the spreadsheet, community development estimated 50,000 in additional revenues. Forestry events 10,000, and forestry parking permits 75,000.
Oh, thanks. in the fine print, thank you.
Yes, yes, I test.
I saw it someplace.
Okay, any additional questions?
Maybe half of it was the forestry permits.
And what was that in terms, just way, in terms of increased percentage for those?
So it was, looking at day use fees, parking fees going from $5 to $10. And then annual fees going to $40.
I think they're like.
30,
30, right?
30.
30 now.
30. Yeah,
25 with an HEB card.
currently 25 to 30. Any other questions? No? Okay. Opt-in formula funding, so, the health department, there was a new federal program, the Rural Health Transformation Program. So these are formula funding funds that would come to our health department to help offset, costs there.
Can you explain to people what formula funds are?
So they are funds that come to the state of Oregon, and then because we have a local health department, we are able to get formula funding for local public health. It would not otherwise come to us if we didn't have local health.
Is this a grant that is also gonna take some back end admin work to?
Yep.
Service it, okay.
And this is in addition to the 190 that's already proposed in the budget for grants.
Correct.
Okay.
Mhm. Any other questions on that? Okay. So our juvenile department went through a process to look at the grants that they received and discussed how they could be used. And so there is one that they can recover to help fund staff, offset the cost of staff in their office. They have access to another grant that then would replace the grant funds. So it felt like a win-win there to bring that in-house. The next item, so when we get down into the next set of line items, we're getting into expenditure savings. So we are in the last year of the DOII opportunity. The portion of grant funds is 44,000. The program costs are about 220,000. So we would recommend eliminating that position. It would run through September of this year. It is a specialty program and given our situation this year without the grant funds to cover it, that's a recommendation.
Should we weigh in on these individually as well, or just kind of?
Yeah, I'd like to.
Yeah, I mean, that personally for me, that's a non-starter. All you gotta do is read the narrative on the DA's budget to understand how vital that position is to his department.
It has been a grant funded position.
I appreciate that, and we knew that year one, which was whatever, 2-3 years ago.
Mhm.
But I just don't see how the DA's office actually is able to operate without that additional head.
I hate to give money back too with the grant. With this amount of money, we can only go through September, with this position.
I don't think we are giving money back to the grants, are we? The grants is ended.
The opportunity is to reapply for the final year, in which we would receive 44,000
Okay,
as
so
an
it's been much
offset.
less than it was when we first started doing it. It was known to be a short-term grant opportunity with a match, and the match has been increasing to the point where the match is now significantly higher than what we get.
The advertisement and the job description said that it is a grant funded.
And the 126 represents the cost of the program after September 30th. So out there for consideration on that one. The next item is to move the Veterans Office physically to the Health Department. We are currently using a contractor for admin support in this office, and this would allow the admin support in the Health Department to provide direct support to the Veterans Office. Again, seems like a win-win. It's not dedicated space like they currently have, but it does get them fully integrated into the health department, which is a benefit.
I appreciate the creativity. I think that these are good examples of just becoming more efficient, being able to use admin that we already have by moving physical location makes
Right.
all the sense in the world.
Okay. So the next line item, I had our HR department go back and look over the last year and look at the monthly cost of our open positions. And so, what you see there, the 316,000 is 5 months of our open positions, a rolled up cost. So 316,000. So it's anticipating, what I've proposed in here is, I think we did a really good job, and frankly, the turnover at the county has been higher than this amount that you see here. My recommendation is the understanding that we would expect to have savings from open positions, and to be able to manage it like we did last year. 5 months of that savings is 316,000.
Sorry, so is that, are you talking about positions that are? I thought that this line was positions that are currently being advertised. You're saying that these are positions that may open during the year?
This number represents positions that are currently being advertised.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it is,
Yeah.
great, thanks.
Yeah.
And another question then, so the 316 number, this would involve closing those positions for 5 months and then maybe reopening, putting them back out after a 5 month break.
Right.
And that the saving comes from, we're just not gonna hire for those 5 months.
Right.
So,
Thank you.
that one gives me a little bit of heartburn. Maybe it's coping for me. Pausing for 5 months when we don't know what our future looks like seems like I think pausing until we know what our future revenue stream looks like makes more sense than for only 5 months. If we're on a glide path and then we rehire and we're unsuccessful with other revenue streams, then we may have to go back and just eliminate positions. I think that's going to be a tough sell to people as well, that we're hiring, but we don't know how long necessarily there's a position. So I think
I mean, who's applying for a
just
job
applying for a job that may not exist
that 7 months later?
7 months later. So that one gives me pause.
Well, and I think that one is along with the concept of revisiting where we were in that amount of time. And it would be coupled with the next line item, looking at developing a limited retirement incentive program. So you would look at offsetting and having the opportunity to reconfigure some departments based on those retirements. We don't know what that looks like. It has to be a program that gets put together and crafted and legally supportable. And so the idea there was to be able to look at those two things together. So that I subtotaled it there because that got us to the over 1 million.
And you also did some math on the open position savings. You did some math on what it would look like if it was 12 months instead of 5 months. And also the math that I saw, I'm not sure if you provided or Sherry provided it. So someone sent me an email and it looked like these numbers were conservative. The 316 was actually closer to 400 and something.
They were conservative.
And then 12 month.
HR did the work, Karen and Taya, and it's just this particular one, general fund cost, the 316,000. They sent it to me first when I looked at it and did a review, I came up to, I think it was 359 or 369,000. And I told her, just go with your work. It looks good.
So close enough is what you're saying.
Yeah,
And and then the extrapolating this to a 12-month is, dividing by 5, multiplying by 12, which is, comes to 700 and something thousand, I think.
Right.
So, so based on what Ed was saying, if you said that in reality, you're not going to hold something for 5 months, then reopen it with the possibility of it closing, of it being positioned has to be removed in 12 months. So that would add another 500, 450, 500,000.
The one caveat to that is the line on the bottom. We have a lot to work through in regards to putting together if there is support for a revenue package and deciding what that might be. We need centralized public information, so the health department has been utilizing a contractor and contract dollars. We have been using a contractor and contract dollars. During this budget, it would be great to have a motion to convert those contract dollars to a position. I realize that's an ask. However, in regards to, the work that we need to do, we need that centralized work. It's just very evident in how we're operating. So the first year would be no net cost, and then it would be up to the sustainability plan that we're putting together to look at what this means to us long term.
So if I can help me understand, the implement, add PIO, that line, what you're saying is that line is budget neutral for this year's budget, but you're asking to make a change to the budget that was presented, which is to move 2 contracts to a position.
Right.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And how is that? Oh, so you just move it from one column to the other?
Right.
Okay.
It moves from materials and services to.
Got
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Reducing contract costs, Ellen.
But not the hers cost, then the hers cost go up.
Exactly. And some, we have an easier time covering administrative costs if they're an employee versus a contractor. So there is a benefit there as we're working through increasing those admin costs as we can with the grants. The lines below there, we point out the museum. It is not something we have to do. OSU Extension, most counties have a relationship with OSU Extension, as do we. We provide them acreage and buildings on which they operate, and we provide them with additional funding for staff. That's not typical for most counties. There can be a special district that supports extension. In this year's budget, that's 117,000. They actually had generated some reserves. That amount has been higher in the past, up to 180,000 for support of OSU extension. And then down below that are just some of the, revenue ideas that we would look at. One that we have going on right now is that we talked about in last budget year. And what you're seeing between last budget year and this budget year is capacity issues. I'm just trying to get things done. But we are entering into a contract that would look at our building leases and telecommunications leases on here, and then easements and arrangements that we have in the county as well, and look at potential revenues that are not to be determined right now, but we know that those old agreements need to be revisited.
Question for you, Allison, on the OSU extension. So the county owns the property. Would this remove the county owned property from use with the OSU extension?
We,
No.
we still have long-term, I mean, we have a really strong relationship with McCarrick, which is an acronym. Mid-Columbia
Agricultural
Research and Extension Center. So we have those contractual relationships where we're providing them the land and the buildings at a cost, so they are able to. This specifically was paying for staff with extension, which is 4-H and.
So Jennifer, you probably know better, but if we had to make a choice like that, that would probably, you think it would affect McCarrick in any way because of like sharing of staff or anything?
Well, the staff,
Because
well, the
losing
extension,
funding for McCarrick would, in my opinion,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be good for the county.
Isn't this next
These
year's?
dollars are just.
This is not the this year.
Extension.
yes, but the
understand.
extension is different from the care in that it's different, there are different programs and it's.
We understand that, but
But the extension agent themselves would probably be partly, is partly funded from that, but you're right, I don't know that it would have much of an effect on the actual
I-
scientific research.
I didn't think that it would, but I just wanted to make sure.
But it does affect things like 4-H.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
other
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the garbage things.
And if I can ask that, that line item shows it impacting in 27, 28. So the idea is it would stay in for 27, 26, but then be on the bubble in the
Yeah, we
following
would
year.
need to have
Okay.
a discussion with them about
Got it.
that.
Okay, thank you.
And so each of these things below this subtotal line are things that don't have a fleshed out plan, like the museum idea is you're turning collection over to someone who hasn't expressed any interest in taking it. It has no funds to do anything with it, but then there are over 100 years worth of contractual obligations, which legal would have to sort through to make that happen. And I am 98% sure that the cost of that would be more than $88,000. So let's not get too excited about the stuff below the line before we've had time to vet those ideas or flesh them out.
So, all in all, if, essentially, this plan would increase revenues and reduce expenditures, so that, the $3.4 million drawdown, would be 2.4 million. It does not, it still considers that $475,000 is transferred over.
And if you instead do the 12-month pause on those positions, then you're pretty close to covering that.
without withdraw from the rate.
Right.
Interest fund.
Right, you're within probably $100,000 or $200,000 of that, which for me is close enough.
I just wanted to say something, Mike made a comment about non-starter on the, position at the DA's office, and while I'm not advocating necessarily for that, removal, I just want to remind everybody we are in a really tough spot. The commission before us, made conscious decision to do a comp in class, which I think this commission is also supported. But it was made very clear, I know I've said it as well, doesn't make any sense to not be able to fill positions because we're not competitive, but with that means we may not have as many positions, and I think that's just the cold hard fact of where we stand right now, in terms of this budget and what we do with future budgets. So should we not find alternate revenue streams, we're gonna have bigger discussions than this position. So again, I'm not advocating for losing that position. I just mean in general terms.
To understand.
So
And
If
on
I
that
can-
same,
If I can ask looking back at the comp and class, which kind of predates my role here.
and mine.
If
Well,
you've
not
got
budget, not on the budget.
if you've
but it
got
was before.
salaries that are competitive, but then they're going up by steps of 4% plus COLA. No one else is getting 6.7% raises year over year. How do you do comp and class? Is comp and class only about the hiring salary? Does it take into effect what happens over someone's tenure and how that changes?
So, when the common class was done, the intention was to look at our salaries to get them to market. And so the steps and the COLA were anticipated to keep them comparable with the market. When the common class was
The
done,
whole package, right?
right,
So everyone has a different way of delivering, in some cases you get a car, some cases you get more vacation time, all of that's considered as part of compensation.
right. And when it was put into place, it's anticipated that it's revisited every 4 years, because you may find as you go out that you've reached that level playing field.
Mhm.
Now, it has been negotiated into all of the contracts, so
Mhm.
again, the common class gives you the basis. If it does not warrant increases, then that gives you the basis for your next contract negotiations. So it wasn't, and I wasn't here, so I could be wrong that it wasn't anticipated to be from here on. It was implemented with board support with the direction to revisit it in 4 years to make sure that it was still doing what it was supposed to be doing or not.
Who are we comparing? Who are we comparing to?
So we have a selection of comparable counties, and
Okay,
there's
that is-
statutory language about who are your comparators.
Tillamook and,
Wasco, Curry, Plaza.
okay. So kind of similar size, similar population.
Right,
counties. Okay.
right. And
All
then,
right, thank you.
we have some unique operations. So for example, we have a 911 district. That is unique in terms of comparables. So it takes that into consideration as well.
Great. Okay, thank you.
And there were some, so the law enforcement and the appraisers were not included in the last common class.
Okay,
So that as we've added positions, we've slotted them, so that also is the opportunity to revisit it and make sure that we're fair with that pay as well.
okay, thank you. And I don't,
Anything to add on that, right?
No, I think you did a really good job representing the value in it. It tells our employees, yes, we're paying attention to what's available in the market as well, and making sure that the way that we're compensating you is competitive with other counties. It also helps to make sure when we're opening positions, we're not drastically off. So even at a cadence of 4 years, I think there's value in revisiting that to make sure that they're still aware and reshuffling if we need to.
and is the value of PERS or OPSERV or whatever the employee's coming into also brought into that comp and class analysis?
It is, yeah, there will be additional information off of the Baker Tilly work because, as they looked at our comparable counties, they also saw nuances to how they're providing compensation that will inform that update as well.
Crystal, how do you-
I just keep trying to square the property taxes and what we know about property taxes do with
Right?
the cost on personnel and nothing about the quality of the staff or the importance or the services or any of that, but
You've just got to.
it's really hard to line up 3% and 6.5%. And I just
One's
I don't know what to do about it.
Yeah.
I'm really struggling with that.
No, it's
Thank you.
different.
Yeah.
Well, just as we were bringing up potential consequences, unintended consequences about changing things with OSU extension, I'd like to understand the consequences to eliminating the DUI prosecutor position. What does that mean?
Yes, Matt's here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as of right now, based on the uncertainty, DDA Gordon, who handles all of the DUIs, has given notice. So her last day already is going to be September 30th, which is when the fiscal year on that grant ends. So regardless of any decision that's going to be making, we have to rehire that position. I believe with the grant, if we kept a little bit of money we have left, we could probably reclassify it so it's not just a solely prosecuting DUIs. That makes it a bit harder to hire because trying to tell somebody to move out here to prosecute nothing but DUIs is the most attractive thing for a lot of criminal attorneys.
There's attractiveness in prosecuting.
yeah, I mean, this.
Everyone has a passion.
Yes, I think we have been blessed the last couple of years with DDA Gordon, and I think there might be one person in the entire state who has a passion of prosecuting nothing but DUIs, and we have that person in our office. And she's very zealous about
And
it.
it's made a difference.
It has, and the big thing about the DUI position is what it really does is we get a lot of DUIs. That's just the reality of the area that we are in. The city police gives us more DUIs than just the DUIs alone that we get from the city is enough to carry an entire caseload for an attorney. So they are one of the most difficult misdemeanors to prosecute because there's a lot of evidence collection in those. There's scientific evidence. We have labs. Those trials, even as misdemeanors, usually take up to 2 days. So and there's a lot of motion work that comes with those as well. So it's a lot of bandwidth to handle that many DUIs, and having DDA Gordon has opened up time for the rest of us to do the other cases, do other projects that we like. Our specialty courts work with trying to work with our restorative justice program. The other things that we would not have time for if we were all prosecuting DUIs at this point. Chief DDA DeCant, DDA Walsh, and myself are working on dividing up all the cases that are coming through on DUIs. We've already had a number of cases at the court is setting for trial. That's gonna be after she leaves. So we're dividing those up and figuring out who's gonna be taking on those new cases. And then as the summer goes on, also how we're gonna be charging those out. And if we're gonna have some new policies about whether we're gonna be a bit more, if we're gonna put some policies in place to have a bit more discretion over which DUIs we're gonna prosecute, such as any DUI, any alcohol DUI that's below a 0.08. DDA Gordon recently had a trial that had an accident involved in it, and the person only blew a 0.07. And on a bench trial, Judge Olson found the person not guilty of the DUI. So it seems to be that it's going to be a lot of work for cases that are probably going to end in not guilty verdicts, as well as taking a harder look at some of the alcohol or the controlled substances like marijuana or methamphetamine DUIs, about whether how much harder those are going to be to prove at trial. Because if we're just going to be setting a lot of trials that are going to wind up in not guilty verdicts, that's going to be a lot of resource strain on the office. That's going to take away from some of the other cases. And as we've seen, we've had a bit of an uptick in some more violent felonies. And I think that as a community, we want to make sure we're giving those the attention that they deserve. And losing that position would make that a lot harder.
Matt, can you I know you were a DA at the point that this position started, but there was a state program to provide a significant grant, a significant amount of grant dollars to encourage more DUI prosecution. Can you talk a little bit to the history of that?
So ODOT does have a grant, and they have something to go out. We did reapply for it for the next year. Because of ODOT cuts and cut funding, they weren't able to give out the amount of money for the next fiscal year that they normally would, which is why it's down to, but I think it's about $45,000 that we would be, we figure out how to fill this position or we have to give it back.
No, I'm sort of asking a leading question. We talked to the city about providing some funding. That this is heavily generated by stuff by people who are your transient use, which many today are collecting the tax for.
I've talked to a couple of city council members. I've talked to this city administrator. I know Allison's also talked.
We have a formal letter of request.
I put a formal letter, and the response I've really been getting has been that no other city helps provide finance or funding to the DDA's the district attorney's office general fund, which is true. And we had that when I was DA in Wasco County, the city of the Dalles was providing that funding until they got a new city administrator, and he said, "Why are we doing this?" So I had this same argument with them, and they cut that money that they were giving my office around $93,000 a year. It started at 80 and it was increasing each year. And I think that in hindsight and talking with DA Davis about this, I think that I may have approached that argument a little bit wrong. And that what we're looking at is there's a number of cities that that do have their municipal courts prosecuting crimes, like
Yeah.
the misdemeanor level, non-violent misdemeanor crimes. So like misdemeanor thefts, criminal mischiefs when property gets damaged, and DUIs.
Right.
So Beaverton, the city of Beaverton has a massive municipal court that prosecutes a lot of DUIs that come out of there, which decreases the burden of the Washington County DA's office because they're prosecuting those cases
Right.
themselves. So I did doing some internet research. I was trying to go through a lot of the
I can tell you the history there. I mean, Hood River did it in about 2012 is when
Yeah.
they stopped doing it.
Yeah, they stopped doing that. And then
The
so
specific reason was because of the costs of being a court of record.
Mhm.
So it was the cost of doing things like providing translation services and other things, which.
well, not just translation services, you gotta pay for jail beds, helps
Right, right.
Norfolk.
Right.
They have to contribute to jail beds. They would have to contribute to public defense services because if you're prosecuting somebody on a crime that they can get jail time, then they have the duty to provide that person a public defender. So that costs money. The cost of hiring an attorney to do the prosecution on that's more time for the judge. So and you also have to have a possible court security that comes in, and when somebody gets arrested, you have to take time away from your city police. So it's a massive cost to run those.
Right.
And there are cities that still run that do those, and for whatever reasons, I believe like even down in Curry County, Gold Beach has their own municipal court that will prosecute their DUIs. Don't quote me on this, but I believe that might be because their DA's office just doesn't have the capacity to do it, so the city just does it themselves.
Right.
But from talking when I was in Wasco County, it was a lot cheaper for them to help fund the DA's office for a position than it was to prosecute them themselves. But then, of course, the next person comes in and goes like, "Why are we doing this? We don't have to."
So the discussion, so we've got fixed amounts of funds available. When this grant came available, it was about the same time as the levy happened. When the levy was being talked about, it was being talked about as a broad public safety levy and which included prosecution side of things as well as enforcement and everything associated with that. Grant comes along, we take a grant, that takes the need for paying for that from the levy out of play. But it was basically a thing that was added as a function of at the same time as the levy happened. And now we can look at this and we have a policy decision to make, which is that you can say, okay, well, I guess, we can't afford to do this, so we're not gonna be prosecuting people, or maybe we can't afford to pay for the law enforcement people who are creating the prosecutions, but those are actually mostly in the city and we have no control over that. So maybe this is a case where we talk about the TLT piece, which is where the city has funds that they would be able to pay us for, then maybe we just collect it directly by adding a transient lodging tax surcharge to cover something like this. So I think there's a discussion that can happen, but it's gonna take. That's one of many discussions we're gonna be having through this year as we talk about adding revenue or cutting expenses, right? This is a good example. I appreciate sort of the tenor in which you approached it, but there are no non-starters in my book. Because you push here, you're gonna pull someplace else.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So,
I just feel like, you're wading through, like, let's just throw an example of the juvenile department, right? We have the DA here, he's talking about restorative practices, he's talking about ways to sort of divert kids, from ending up in juvenile justice. And yeah, I don't know, I guess I'm just going down a rabbit hole, so I'll just stop.
That already occurs, so some of the grant funds that she is using are those diversion. So with their caseload, you're not seeing that caseload go to the jail because they've already implemented diversion practices, which they administer through their office.
So I think DA Ellis makes a really compelling case, and I'll say this really carefully because the language is important here, but the DA's office, in my opinion, has been historically underfunded because of a poor relationship between the DA and the Board of Commissioners. And he has inherited this. And I think that we should be figuring out how to correct this and this is kind of an example of, this is one of the symptoms of that, bad relationship. But, what we've got today is a short-term problem that we're looking for long-term problems over the course of this year. If we take a one-year glide path plan, that's kind of the time to be addressing it. I'm not sure we can address it today.
Fair enough.
I am looking to try to find other grants. We're applying for a federal grant right now that would, it's a kind of a Hail Mary, but it would give us $400,000 over the course of 3 years, which it wouldn't completely fund an attorney position for 3 years. We could do something else with it, or we could we'll have a little bit extra in the budget. We could possibly just have an attorney position there, which would only cost us about an extra 200,000 over the course of 3 years to do that with that grant. It's a community, small jurisdiction community safety grant. I have an outside organization that does a lot of these types of things, trying to help me out with it. So maybe, but we understand that the crunch, we're trying to find creative ways to work with, to find other sources of funding on these things. But as a prosecution office, without some help from the city, it's just really hard.
Right.
So
Will
we're-
you be, go ahead. Will you be able to operate this year? I mean, losing this DDA Gordon, is that her name?
Yeah, Jessica Gordon, yeah.
How are,
We have until September on this grant. Maybe this Hail Mary grant that the other grant will come through. I'm not counting on it.
otherwise you're just gonna have to,
Otherwise, this office has operated with two DDAs before. I think I probably added some more work to us by the prior administrations would not go to grand jury, which is one of the processes that we have to, before we go to trial in any felony. Oregon law requires us to go to grand jury, which is 7 people that make a decision on whether we have enough evidence to go forward with the case. That's been happening every Friday, which has taken a little bit of bandwidth out. I didn't like that practice of not going to grand jury and then holding people, and then having telling defense to take an offer. You have to waive the right for your client to go to grand jury. I found it very useful to go to grand jury. It helps us better evaluate our case. It gives those citizens that are sitting in grand jury a chance to have community feedback on how we're prosecuting our cases. I've definitely changed charging instruments based on how evidence is coming out, gone up or down on charges after hearing the evidence instead of just seeing reports. It helps, I think, a bit with some of the newer law enforcement people to actually have a chance to come in and testify in a more controlled environment than being cross-examined by a defense attorney. So that was one of the corners that was cut when this office was under resourced with prior administrations. I'm not going to go. I was able to take that step because we had enough coverage. I don't want to go back. So I think it's just going to be, I think what we're going to have to do is just use our prosecutorial discretion. And it might be unfortunate that we are not prosecuting some cases that we would have otherwise prosecuted with more resources. We'll have to take a harder look at some of those low-level misdemeanors. We have the ability to take a misdemeanor theft or a misdemeanor trespass and get violation treatment. So the person can just pay a fine or do some community work service, not to worry about a criminal conviction on those types of cases. It's not ideal. I don't think it's what our community wants, but those are probably if we get overwhelmed with too many referrals coming in, we're probably going to start thinking about taking those steps. I know DA Rasmussen started declining any B and C misdemeanors for a while because they just had too much coming in that they could handle.
This would be a strong argument into TLT measure. Right.
I never want to create chaos. I always want to try to manage carefully, and sometimes something has to go away for people to see how valuable it is.
So the 126, we were expecting it and then we didn't get it.
No, the 126 is the net expense that's in the budget.
Okay.
If we eliminate the position after September 30th.
Okay.
So the program is in the budget, and
So it is an actual savings
it is a savings.
of 126.
Mhm.
So it's just, okay.
Yeah.
And then back to Arthur's point, I would like that for next year that we do something to repair the relationship by making sure that we're doing something to fund the DA's department appropriately so that you can do your work, because when we compare the size of our county and the DA staff to comparable counties where we're fully.
Down by one compared to.
And the budget,
Wasco.
yeah, and the budget number.
They have one more attorney and they have one more support staff and one more victim advocate.
I'm just using the numbers there.
Yeah, and I think it's easy it can be easy to end up in sort of whack-a-mole mode, and from my other work, I'm sort of well aware of what behavior courts, family court, there's a bunch of things that the justice system can do that make people healthier, keep families together, keep kids out of foster care, like have all kinds of downstream effects.
Yeah.
And if you don't have time to think, you don't have time to do that. I understand that.
So if we keep the 126 in the budget, is there scope then to hire another attorney, or is that just gonna be kind of paused until you get clarity
No.
on grants, or?
The rolled up cost of a deputy. $169,000.
That's just wages or with?
That's wages
benefits
and
there?
benefits.
And Did you hire the same position or?
If I'm not restricted to just the DUI attorney, I could. I guess the good thing is that since she leaves on September 30th, the bar results come out in September. So any new baby attorneys just coming out of law school just pass the bar before we need that position hired. So that's and obviously an entry level attorney would be at the lowest level on the pay scales. That would be a possibility to hire that position and advertise for it now and then have people apply for it and then also get somebody ready to go if they pass the bar to them.
In the position savings, there are current openings that are deputies, a legal secretary in the DA's office, just so for full awareness.
Okay.
Yeah, we need to hire that position.
And you know, if that just represents the general fund. So we have a number of grants that we have to fulfill. And they have open positions that we are trying to hire for. One of them is what's his wildfire coordinator is. When does that close? Soon.
I don't know off the top of my head. This week.
This week.
So do we have a list of the open positions?
It's, I've been providing that to you every month.
Yeah, but I mean,
For today,
this.
Oh, it's in the
It's
mission packets.
it's what's in the budget. And we're subtracting, we'd be asking staff to subtract specific positions from the budget. You're asking for a list of those positions.
I have it with me. I can make copies for everyone if that is.
So, I have a suggestion to make, but I think, Chris, did you want to speak? Were you trying to get in before? I'm cutting you
No,
off.
but I'll take the opportunity.
Great.
So I'll take a big picture perspective here. And go back to, I think what this demonstrates to us is that Allison and her staff can do a lot of hard work and come up with a lot of good ideas. I don't feel like we need to adopt any of these actually as part of this budget process. I think that they've proven that they can do that and they will do that. I am still coming back to, I don't think we have the information we need to do long-term financial projections. I appreciate the work you've done, Arthur, but to me, what you've done is a budget projection and not a forecast. And we need a forecast. A forecast explains why, when you budget 14 million for personnel, you only end up spending 12. It explains when people who are tier 1, tier 2 PERS will drop out of the system, and therefore your PERS rate is going to go down 5%. It explains those things and it allows you to model all these different scenarios. We don't have that yet. And I don't feel comfortable as a budget committee member, whose role statutorily is just to pass a 1-year budget plan, making long-term financial decisions of this kind of magnitude as part of this process, especially when we're talking about holding positions open arbitrarily for 5 months. Again, we're not to that point of disaster that we need to do something like that without consideration of the whole process that Allison has laid out.
Thank you.
Chris, what do you recommend instead?
I would thank Allison and her team for all this hard work. And I would adopt the budget that we have before us with the understanding that they will do that work, complete that work, and probably have a supplemental budget during this coming year. A supplemental budget being an amendment to a budget.
You mean the budget without these changes?
Yes.
So I'll be a hard no on that. And I think, first of all, I think that there are specific sidebars to the amendment process, and I am actually not convinced that we're allowed to make changes of that size during the budget year in a supplemental. We don't have infinite ability. But more than that, I think it's simply, you're completely right. I wasn't in any way trying to do a forecast. I'm simply doing the simple math of telling you what numbers we have in front of us. And if in basically in the last 3 years, we spent down, a $9 million surplus down to basically fumes. And that's the time at which we're asking the public for some funds. And if we don't get additional revenues from the funds, we're in serious problem. I don't think that's meeting our fiduciary responsibility. And from a policy point of view, I can't accept that unsustainable budget practice. I believe that we have a reasonable proposal which can get us to a 1-year set of requests to the public for additional funding. And if they say no, which I think is a very strong possibility, we're then going to be cutting seriously. This is not cutting anything meaningful. This is, I don't want to say that, I don't want that to be taken the wrong way, but it's cutting positions that don't have people in them today. It is removing positions that would be serving the people of the county, but it's not having the negative effect on staff that cutting existing positions would have. If we instead go and remove, if we let these positions continue to be advertised, I'm not in any way convinced that we're going to be filling them, because the discussion we're having today is a public discussion. And we are very much in a position where at the end of this fiscal year, we have to make serious cuts because we have failed in getting additional revenues. So I think it's my responsibility to be sure that we don't enter the following year in a position that forces us to be in an even worse position than we could have been. This is, despite the pain that's involved in this, it's not serious pain compared to the pain we'll have if at the end of the next fiscal year, we don't have additional revenues and we've allowed the reserves to be spent down and we have no ability to pay because we failed at our attempts to get revenue additions.
So is one of our options to adopt the budget that we have incorporating these changes? That's one of our.
Yeah,
I'm suggesting doing that, but with it being a 12-month instead of a 5-month pause on those positions, because number one, that gets us to the actual reserve number we're talking about, gets us, probably to like a 12% reserve number. And number two, that gives us the reasonable path forward.
I want to also thank Allison and everybody everyone in the audience for rolling up your sleeves and finding the money that we needed found. And that can't have been easy. And I really appreciate you coming back to the lead and doing that work. Thank you.
I'd love to get sort of a sense of the room, not officially a vote, but kind of a sense of where people, some folks have spoken, some folks that haven't spoken. As I see it, I've heard the options I see are adopt the budget as presented to us, adopt the budget with these changes that have been proposed, adopt the budget with these changes, except a 12-month hold on positions, or something else that someone's thought of and hasn't shared with us yet. I just wonder if folks are comfortable, I'd love to just go down the table and have you say, here's what I think is my preference, or I want to pass or whatever, but just to get a sense of where's the committee as a whole on this decision we need to make. Can I ask you to start?
Sure, yeah, no, I'm comfortable with incorporating these into the budget.
With the 5-month position hold.
No, I think we need the 12.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I would go with adopting everything except the position hold.
Okay.
I'd like to see 12 months, and I mean, honestly, I'd like to see us scratch at some more cuts that are deeper, but I think that's, you know, it's more of a policy decision that you'll need a year or two to implement, so.
Okay.
So my question is, did the departments come up with this with you as far as the cuts that you have made out of? Not the cuts, but say the not rehiring or the pausing. Is this something that each department was involved with?
We discussed, we went department by department to look at the cuts.
Mhm.
In regards to the holds on the individual positions. The sheriff's office we've discussed it. They're all aware that that's a possibility. I'm looking. Were all of you aware that that would be a possibility, that current open positions could be frozen? And I guess from my, and I see nods.
There's no way.
The DA is saying he can't function without a legal secretary. And I would want clarification, because in the list of open positions are grant funded positions. And so are we just talking general fund positions?
I was talking general fund position. I thought that's what all you proposed here.
I just want to be clear.
Sherry shook her head no, and that's
The positions are 100%, the 316 to 359,000 is general.
Okay.
And how many positions is that?
Currently, it is, I didn't bring your.
four.
Right, so we have three deputies,
If we're not gonna fill anything, then if we're hiring one right now, so that would be 4.
we have the list.
There's
Karen's gonna.
hiring one means you already made an offer.
No, we have interviews next
Okay.
week.
We're not in the budget area.
We were only going to fill one and we're gonna leave 3 of them because of how slow hiring is, and so I had already proposed that.
Yeah.
And I actually proposed 6 months, January.
So the deputy positions, the legal secretary, the nurse. I proposed the public information officer outside of that.
So
Oh, and then the backfill for the assessment records and elections, because they did an internal hire
Mhm.
for assessment. Yeah. So there's a
it
technician.
looks to me like there's. I would think that it might be smart for us to ask you to refine this and discuss it next week. Later this week, or I guess this is Thursday.
Maybe we
right?
can, let's finish kind of getting the sense of the room. Quick, Chad, where are you?
I guess,
I would revise, because any positions that would generate revenue or that would support the DA's office, I would be okay with filling.
Okay. Some refinement. Okay.
yeah, I
good,
guess
good.
that's where I was going, is I'd like to know what are we freezing versus just that there's some open positions that we're not filling, because we need to know if the departments can function properly without those positions, or are we already kind of on edge with that?
So you heard from the sheriff, so there are the positions in the sheriff's office, the legal secretary, you heard from the DA. The nurse, we did not hear from Trish.
I had proposed that we delay hiring for 3 months, because we do need that position filled so we can run. We can build services.
Okay.
So
Chad, do you have?
it sounds as like we need a revision of the jobs or the, unfilled positions.
Okay. Where are you, Chad, in thinking about the different options to support?
Well, I mean, obviously, we need to figure out a way to. I like this idea. I just would like to know for sure if we're making a good decision on what departments we are going to hire positions.
Okay, okay. Matt, where's your thinking?
Yeah, I'm comfortable adopting this budget as a package. If these things are on the table over the year, if the Board of Commissioners and admin can revise and implement these. You know, if we just pass this budget without this.
So adopt the original budget as well.
Adopt the original, but then know that there's other work in progress. I would be comfortable with that. With one caveat, I have to push to keep the DUII position. However we have to fund that. I think it's very important to this county because we have such a high traffic tourism focused industry. And a lot of these folks that are coming through that are involved in these DUIs, they are from out of county. So it is one of the costs of just keeping our people safe. And I would push that we at least keep that and the legal secretary in play for the year.
Ed, what's your thinking?
With the hiring freeze until we have a better idea of revenue streams.
And when you say hiring freeze, what are you thinking about?
So I guess. I think it's gonna have clarity, we would have clarity 12 months down if they have to make harder decisions and they may not be able to. I mean, to say 12 months, I guess implies that they would come back. We don't know that.
Mhm.
Yeah,
But to not fill open positions for
We don't-
12 months.
We don't know that. We don't know that we'll be able to fill them if we don't have different revenue streams. So, I mean, 12 months seems like an arbitrary number, and I know it makes people feel comfortable to say hiring freeze, but I think that's where we're at.
Okay, thank you.
Can you clarify for me, Ed? So we're not talking about just the positions that are currently open. You're saying that any opening that occurs within the 12 months, we would automatically not fill.
Current
Okay,
open positions.
all right.
To get us to the glide path, which is what I would like to see. So we can have some clarity going forward. If we don't get a revenue stream, then we're gonna be making much bigger cuts. I mean, we're still talking about with this proposal and the glide path, we're still talking about burning another $2.5 million. We'll soon be out of money. So if something else doesn't happen.
Mhm. Okay, Joe, where's your thinking?
I would vote for the budget for these additions and hold the positions for 12 months. And then pursue with alternative revenue source.
Okay.
So we're presuming that, I just want to make clear that we're presuming that a 1-year glide path is the right answer. And I fear that the reason why we're doing that is because it would be too hard to come up with numbers to get a 2-year glide path. That's a really short fuse for staff to find additional revenue sources. The earliest we can know if we have new revenues is probably going to be next May, so a year from now.
After we do this next year.
Following November, but
Okay,
we could have something on the ballot next May, which would give us some certainty. And when you have certainty, then spending reserves, spending contingencies, et cetera, or making budget adjustments is far more justifiable. But right now, I'm not super confident on any of this. And so I think, the responsible thing to do is to guard our cash position. And, do everything that we just talked about.
Arthur, is there a way you think, so for next year's process, right, we won't know until maybe the last budget committee meeting if a levy is passed, right? Is it something that we can telegraph and say, okay, here's budget A, here's budget B. If it doesn't pass, you're getting budget B.
That's precisely what we talked about doing the last time, and I couldn't get them to do it. I begged them to do it. I wasn't on board of commissioners then. I was on a budget committee along with Ed, and they didn't do that. But I think I totally agree with you.
Okay.
I think you tell people
So what you're gonna lose.
it's such a perfect opportunity to to get some clarity to it. We've got budget A, we have budget B. It's not a threat. This is just reality. Both of these budgets, the county still exists at the end of the day. But you're getting a different level of services because this is all that we can afford to provide. If we don't get this money, if we do get this money, we can afford to provide this.
So based on what folks have heard, does anyone want to make a motion regards either passing something, voting today, or trying to get clarity around a request to staff of something that would have majority support from this group in a subsequent meeting?
I think we need to get a little more math from staff, so I could make a motion, or I would make a motion, that we ask staff to, prepare, I'm not sure if I should say final budget documents, because sometimes you make adjustments at the very end. But to prepare, to do a solid run through on the budget documents, making the changes, discussed in here with a 12-month pause on hiring, filling of the open positions, and to bring back to us details of specifically what those positions are and what those numbers behind them look like, because it sounded like people want to get into the discussion of, is this what I want to do? Is that what I want to do? I'll warn you, I like the fact that we didn't know what the positions were, because it makes it clear, yes, that's a non-strategic way to do things, but it makes it clear this is strictly a budgetary operation that we're taking. We don't have the money. We can't afford to do some things we're doing. We have a choice of either laying off people who are working the job already or not hiring people who aren't working the job.
Okay.
And
All right, so we have a motion. Is there a second?
You just,
sorry,
Sorry, if it's for us to discuss this, we need to have a second.
you're
okay. I'll second.
Thank you.
But-
Would you like to discuss it?
Yes, I would like to discuss it. We talked about moving the 475 contingency instead of the timber deposit interest, or was that table for our
I thought that was
discussion?
built into the, I thought that was built into the motion.
Okay.
Because that's why.
That's
we
why
go
that's the
from
question.
5 months to 12 months. I'm sorry, so
Okay.
Okay.
was that
So
not?
I think, are you proposing a friendly amendment
Well, just-
perhaps?
I am proposing a friendly amendment, which
Okay.
is moving the 475 that was taken from the timber deposit interest fund, taking that 475 from contingencies.
Or
The 475,000.
You don't have to do, you just have
just
to.
remove the transfer?
Just remove the transfer.
Mhm.
Remove the timber interest, fund transfer.
Okay,
Okay, so thanks for having me amend that motion.
you're
which I-
welcome. Art,
which I-
did you accept that
Yeah.
friendly amendment? Okay, we're gonna call that good. All right. Further discussion.
We have staff. that
Sherry.
is-
So what they were saying is that if we move the 475 back, that leaving the positions open for the full year should be the offset, which would leave the contingency as it is.
Right, we get
So
within
we've gotta do them
100,000.
Yeah.
Within 150,000, which, yeah,
That's right.
I'm fine with that.
So I have a question regards this idea of. I guess for me, it doesn't matter to me that this position that was open stays unfilled. And this position that had a person in it can keep a person in it. If someone were to leave a position in a department and then that freed up personnel money and it's staff's decision that it's better off filling the position that was open rather than the position that was filled. So it's certainly my preference that we hold budget levels as though the positions remain unfilled, but I don't feel the need to speak to what positions are filled and what positions are open.
I completely, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does anyone have a conflict?
I just think
Concern about
that's
that?
great. Staff is not gonna have a lot of fun managing this through the year.
No,
It's gonna be hard. The reality is it's going to be hard to fill open positions. It's going to be hard to recruit under this.
but for me, it
Dark
doesn't actually have to say these chairs stay
I agree.
open, these chairs stay filled. So you all
It's a
can,
budgetary question.
if you all can integrate that in your proposal, which is that we're holding the budget levels as though the positions stay unfilled. We're not actually telling you which which chairs you spend the money on.
I'm
The
even
budget
more
is-
confused now on what we're trying to do.
The budget at the level we have it in this book doesn't identify individual positions.
Yep, exactly.
Right.
But if your directive now is to say to staff, you have to not spend whatever these open positions currently represent. Let's say, well, we know they represent 316,000. I can't.
That's for
remember.
5 months, so
Okay.
multiply by,
But our directive then to staff is to say you can't spend $316,000 on personnel. We're not going to tell you which personnel. We're not going to tell you what positions, what people, what departments. You have to figure that out, but you have to make 316,000. That seems extremely arbitrary and capricious to me.
I don't think that's what
It's
she said.
Allison and her team that know, okay, so what are we actually saying to?
What we're saying is reduce the budgets for personnel as if the positions that are currently unfilled are not filled during the year
In those departments?
in those departments.
So then that speaks to specific position. How we did it last year was, we know that over the course of the year, we're gonna have turnover. And so there was an ongoing monitoring to make sure that we were having regular budget savings. And it wasn't, tied to any specific position. It was just ensuring that we were maintaining that turnover.
This motion isn't, would do it by department, not by individual job
Yeah.
though. Right, because it's going to be, the budget that Sherry and Clayton are gonna come back with is going to reduce the payroll numbers.
That's true.
For a specific department that won't specify the job.
Right, okay.
Right, so we've just told the sheriff's department that they have to cut the equivalent of 4 positions out of the budget for the
Right.
coming year.
Mhm.
And we've done that based on the positions that are currently open, not
Correct.
anything strategic about what positions are most important to the county or how that
Mhm.
savings
Or
might
patrolmen.
cost share. It's just
Mhm.
based on what is in the world in front of us today.
Exactly.
Again, that seems completely arbitrary and capricious to me.
We weren't presented with a better plan. No, I understand. I understand your concerns, I hear. Yeah. Other discussion?
Is there a way to give more flexibility? I mean, I struggle with the same issue, which is, we have to have cuts, and I wanna find not a middle ground, but where we can say these cuts have to be made and give administration flexibility. And I don't know, where that line is, where we're providing maximum support, allowing flexibility, but then also saying, but this is the top number. This is, we're cutting this much. And, I don't know a better way to say that. Do you think that the way that we are going about this gives you that flexibility? You can have flexibility within the departments, but not across the county, correct?
Right.
Mhm.
Would it be healthier to have it across the county for some reason?
Well, I'm looking to Sherry and Clayton in regards to the budget administration. What are your thoughts?
And I'm looking to the director as far as budget administration. Their budget. We just put it in a book and make it look pretty.
I'm pretty value of looking across the county because when you're thinking about where this is, that we need to reach out and say, hey, I have this goal to fill, like, does your team have extra capacity? And maybe that would ignite, more discussion to share, but also maybe that's not even realistic. To have to look to one another to say, hey, can you not fill your position so I can fill mine?
I realize that what I'm saying is a difficult, it's like, I want you guys to have the flexibility to do the right thing. With suggestions like that. And it's Allison's decision how to do this, and so I wanna somehow make it clear that it has to be this amount of money over the year. And you have the flexibility, like, the suggestion would be you have 4 open spots in one place, but if something opens up somewhere else and someone says, well, we could do without that, you have some flexibility. And I'm not trying to create chaos, because look,
I think we're trying to make something that's really hard easier, and there's no ability to do that.
yeah.
Why would
I
you,
go back to Arthur's point, and by not filling unfilled positions, that's the least amount of pain we can inflict in a very, very painful process. I get it. It's hard. I don't know how we're gonna make it easier.
I guess
we're in a-
I'd like
we're in a difficult position.
Yeah, I'd like to hear Allison's response though about this idea that if another position opens up and can be left unfilled, and then there was a position that's unfilled now, it would be good to fill it. Is there a way within Oregon budget law for us to give you that sort of decision making?
Well, I think if we are saying that we want to lower the expenditures for personnel services by the amount identified. And not have it tied to a position, that means that on a monthly, basis, we're having to look at. Where are we in terms of our expenditures and what has left, and have a conversation in regards to every position. And that's essentially what we did last year.
And which is preferable.
The key difference for last year is that we didn't flow those into the budget document. If we flow it into the budget document to take out the timber deposit interest, it has to hit real accounts. I have to take it from somewhere to balance the budget.
I don't find
Oh,
the history. Chris is right that this is non-strategic. The fact is, our current budget situation, the balance between our departments, where we're spending money is the result of years of being non-strategic. Basically doing things because they were easier rather than because this is where we wanted the services and this is what we wanted to do. So I get that this is non-strategic and we need to become more strategic, but this turning it over to staff and asking staff to balance things out, they don't know what the strategy is. They don't know what we want to spend more on and what we want to spend less on. We will have to start making decisions about that. Turning control of that over to staff doesn't make it more strategic. It just makes it easier to budget.
but is this what you did last year?
Last year, there was a ask of staff, specifically at the administration and directors level, to achieve this savings without hard flowing it through the budget document. If the motion is to take out the timber deposit interest transfer of $475,000, I cannot balance the budget unless it comes out of somewhere. So it can come out of contingency as was initially approved, and that would balance it, and then staff can manage that way with the same sort of mandate. Or it has to come out of a real payroll expenditure line item. And that can always be shuffled with resolutions throughout the real year as people start figuring out where that comes from. But I have to take that number out of somewhere. The budget won't balance without it.
Which is what this is. That's what this document represents.
And there's been talk about whether or not maybe some revision should do clarification of the.
We can't
I need
approve
specific
these
account
changes
numbers.
today.
Take it out.
I'm sorry, you
Yeah.
can't?
We cannot approve with these amendments today.
No one asked that. I thought the motion was to rework the budget document with the two elements of the 475 and the changes expressed in here with it being 12 months instead of 5 months. And then we can have a discussion about it at another meeting.
Some of these, that's in the general fund. Not all of these have a general fund piece.
The subtotal, the 1027 number is not all general fund?
No.
It is what we have found out is the 200,000 that is in the health department would be offset in some other funds. And so I think that was a late discovery.
19,000 is the indirect, which would hit the general fund of the 200,000.
DA is mostly in the DA DUII division, so only the portion that's the transfer in that's filling that budget void would go back to the general fund. And then some of the position stuff, we probably should go back to the drawing board and make sure we have real accounts to know where that actually.
We've had a lot of positions prior to the delivering the proposed budget. Directors had already offered up some positions. So when asked for the number of open positions that affect the general fund, that's a correct number, but we've already taken them out of the budget. So some of them.
And I I put this memo together with the conversation with the department directors on Monday. I did not realize that Clayton has not had a chance to digest all of it, to understand how it would directly impact the line items.
So we have a motion to ask
Yep.
Clayton
Go
and
back to the-
Sherry to
Yep.
clarify it.
So
That's
your-
great. Sounds like
your
that's what you
motion is-
needed even more,
Right.
so.
Exactly.
So what, as I'm thinking about this, we've had this talk about this, the freezing open positions, which would have a budget impact of over 12 months of more like $750,000. If we extrapolate.
It's multiply by 12, divide by 5, so.
I did all.
750.
750.
Yeah, 750.
That's one of the key problems there is that exact topic. You guys are talking about doubling it, and we've already gotten some of that in the budget, so. You can
You have to figure
only
out-
do the other half of it at best, which is more or less that number, right? Some of it, maybe not, but
Yeah.
some of it is, and so. Okay. Go ahead.
So I guess what I'm clarifying is, are we asking for the sort of, I've heard talk about not hiring the open positions. The goal of that would be to save another $750,000 on the personnel costs in the budget. Do we feel strongly about it being hold positions open versus find this savings in personnel?
If the answer comes back, if I hear an answer that comes back that says, yeah, there's not 750 there, I'm gonna ask, where are we finding the 750? That answers your question,
Okay.
but that's just me.
Well, I'm pretty committed to the idea of the glide path,
Mhm.
and 70% of our expenses come from personnel, so where it comes from,
Mhm. Yeah, it's hard to say. Okay. Are we ready to vote?
unfortunately.
Are we ready to vote on the motion that we've been discussing?
I think that or I need a break, so let's.
Could you please just clarify quickly what it is exactly that we're voting on?
So as I understand, we're requesting for staff to come back with a budget amended more or less, it's amended in this manner, but also showing the budget impact of holding the open positions open for the full year. And also removing the transfer from the timber deposit interest fund as an inflow to the budget.
And there would be a dollar amount with each position.
Let's,
It's
I
gonna be
think it would
departmental
be
budget.
cumulative, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
let's,
just wondering if there is any opportunity for hiring a legal secretary to be it.
why don't, let's see if we can vote on this, and then if we want to go through with some refinements afterwards, maybe we'll move on to that. All right, so. Why don't we go down the table and just vote on the motion that's before us?
Yes.
Yes.
We're just asking for information with this motion, right?
We're asking staff to come back with this division.
And Clayton, can I ask, is that possible for you to pull off?
I basically need numbers from the departments of what GL numbers that's gonna come out of, and I can do it, for sure.
Yes.
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 Yes,
Okay, chair votes yes, motion passes.
can I take a break?
Sure, let's
I just-
take a 10-minute break and then come back and maybe briefly discuss. And folks can think about their specific refinements, specific questions, so we can hopefully get this thing done. And we'll talk about when we're gonna meet next week, if it's Thursday or otherwise.
Thursday.
I don't know. So if there. Okay, we'll reconvene our meeting now. And we need to decide when we're gonna meet again. And then also, I think it's very helpful if folks can talk about specific things they're gonna want to see, questions. I mean, I know it's hard. Every time we get new information, you say, here's what I want to see, and you get it, and then you're like, oh, but what about? And at some point, we do have to say this is good enough and defer to staff and the budget process and let things happen. And if there's really important information, I want you to have it.
Well, that was the question I was gonna ask.
Yeah.
Is if staff has ideas of how we can give them the flexibility that I think some of us think they need to make these decisions themselves. And is there a way to do that with this budget? Is there language or a strategy that would enable that to happen?
Well, I think one of the concerns for Clayton is if there is concern about being flexible around positions. What is more manageable for from a budgetary standpoint is to return the 475 to the timber deposit interest fund and lower the contingency so that there's that offset. I realize that doesn't address the freeze, but then that gives me the flexibility to manage over the course of the year to ensure that we end with a larger contingency and fund balance. And then the other piece of this is that there's revenues contemplated in it, and we need to see how those materialize. And so I think then that is the scene where we are at 6 months.
Well, I'm hoping that one of the things that will come out of this is that we do have a monthly or at least quarterly, and for sure at 6 months, where an update every month to tell us exactly where we are vis-a-vis hiring.
Can I ask a different question, which is if you're looking, in order to get the personnel expenditures at the goal we've talked about, if there's more in contingency, it's my understanding that's what a contingency is for, is, oh, this personnel number wasn't quite right, we need to access contingency. What's the process for accessing a contingency fund? Department by department?
It's by fund, and you can
Fund.
take up to 15% of the total funds expenditures with, you are technically appropriating contingency. You're just saying you don't know what category it goes in: personnel, materials and services, capital outlay. So by budgeting it, you could just shift it over with a simple budget resolution. But if you took it out and put it into back into the timber deposit interest fund, you could still in theory add it, but you're gonna increase the likelihood that it'll be a supplemental budget, because that's the only expenditure out of the timber deposit interest fund. So any number is gonna exceed 10% when you put it back to zero. And so you could still tap into it. You just have to hold a supplemental budget hearing if there were an emergency that you felt like you needed to move that back into the general fund to balance it. But yeah, so.
But I'm sorry, but I thought supplemental budgets though are limited based on the LB1 document, right?
The supplemental budget is saying we're amending the adopted budget after the
No,
LB1 draft.
but it's not, you can't change everything by infinite amounts. There are limitations to how much you can change things, and my understanding is those limitations are based on the line items that get published in the LB1 document.
I believe there is, for a supplemental budget, there's less than 10% increase.
Right.
Or beyond 10% increase. So there's different
Fund.
rules for how you handle it. But yeah, I'm not aware, there might be a hard ceiling. I'm not aware of one.
But it's by fund too, materials and services.
It's by fund,
rolled
yes.
up and personnel rolled up.
So if I might address Jennifer's question, logistically, there aren't any limits on supplemental budgets. It's just a different process, public hearing as
Public
opposed to a
hearings, right.
simple
I'm
resolution.
not confident of that,
So-
I'm really not, I want to get a legal check on that.
Oh, yeah, just, or you can grab the budget manual from DR's website.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But back to Jennifer's logistical question, the way to handle this is not in the budget. What's Clayton is telling you is that a budget is a management tool. And any change in the budget has to go to a specific account. If we're talking about trying to achieve a $300,000 savings in personnel over the year, the way to do that is to create a forecast and pencil it into the forecast. And set up the forecast with different scenarios that get you to the target number you want, and then hold Allison and her staff to that. And say, yeah, day to day, you're managing this budget document, but overall over the next year, we want you to get to this forecast target. Clayton doesn't have to put it into line items in the general ledger account, then it's not the budget, it's a forecast. And frankly, I just don't buy the idea that the county hasn't been responsible in the past in managing its money, and therefore we should assume that it's not going to be in the future, and we should force this into a budget. I am far more comfortable saying we're gonna have a solid, sophisticated forecast within 3 weeks, or we're gonna fire Baker Tilly. And we're gonna manage to a target in that forecast that says, get us there, Allison. Personnel, $316,000, whatever it takes. That's her job.
An appropriation is legal permission to spend money.
Yes,
Right?
which can
So
be changed through a supplemental budget or a budget
that
resolution.
be changed, and the degree to which it can be changed, I have to understand better, but. We have there are appropriations at certain line item levels, and that's what we're doing. We're not being asked to do a budget that's just a top line number. We have to put appropriation lines, right? Each of these lines is
You create a
appropriation.
budget with general ledger accounts and you roll
Yeah.
it up into appropriation lines. That's just logistics.
That's why I'm asking about the LB one, because that's the level at which it's published, and that's the level at which there are state laws which hold us to those, and then there are budgetary practices below that, which is how we divide it further. And I remember general fund is treated differently than all the other funds. And so I don't remember the specifics of within the general fund of what the level of appropriation is in the LB one document, and then what ability we have to change that.
So the LB one rolls it up into personnel services and materials and services across the.
Okay,
general
across all of it,
fund
right.
and- Right,
And that's our lawful appropriation, correct? Yeah, so if we're
Right.
finding that one line in the general fund personnel can subsidize another. Can just be off budget and we're not getting hit because that's the way that we present our LP one at the
Right.
personnel level.
Okay.
But
So you have a fair amount of flexibility at that level because it's the general fund, which is is,
but it does need to come
Much
out
less
of,
specific.
yeah, specific
but
accounts.
it has to come out of the timber
Uh-huh.
fund.
Does that answer your question, Jennifer?
I
About giving
think
them
so.
flexibility versus the flexibility they may already have?
I think so.
Letty, you had a question about positions?
Yeah, and I'm hearing what Kits is saying also. And it is Allison's job to hire and manage our budget in that way as the administrator. I'm interested with the positions that are open, which ones could create revenue and will create revenue, and also knowing and appreciating that the DA needs a legal secretary. And we talked about the consequences for not prosecuting DUIs, and we didn't get to the fact that folks will continue driving under the influence if they know, hey, it's just gonna get dismissed. I don't want that, and we don't want that. And I don't know, what changes can be made, whether it's a fine or, I don't know all of that, legally.
Sorry, we're legally obligated to prosecute
Or-
the DUIs that we have that have sufficient evidence put for them, so we would still have to figure out a way to prosecute like those type, like, if it's above a .08, then we're.
Above a point,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah, we're
yeah,
gonna
but
prosecute.
anything below or
Yeah,
other,
if it becomes disgrace or below, or some of the ones who don't get approved that are controlled substances like marijuana. Those.
yeah,
Or one of.
it's still under the influence of marijuana or methamphetamine, but not what we want for a safe community. Anyway, so interested in those details, like which ones you would think would bring in revenue, but I'm struggling with the fact that that is your job throughout the year and want to trust that you can save that money, and we're all in agreement that we need to be financially responsible with these public dollars.
Does anyone else has any specific thoughts related to what they need to see to come to a decision?
If we could identify the things in the budget that we don't care about and not fund those, our job would be easier.
Yeah.
But pretty sure that everything that Nina is doing at this point is something that's important. And we heard the story from the DA, so we understand the drama and the importance of that. We haven't heard the stories from the places we would take the money from to do that. so we don't know that. I checked ORS 294, which is Oregon, the central Oregon budget law, and the supplemental budget is limited to certain, you have to meet certain circumstances. And that's where the trick is, that the specific circumstances you need in order to do supplemental budget are somewhat limiting. You don't get to say, yeah, we changed our mind. There have to be changes in circumstances or pressing necessities, but the necessities are defined in a way that there are things that could not have been foreseen. The fact that we're discussing these say that they could have been foreseen. So that we may be more limited in this. And I remember having long discussions with finance directors and attorneys about what you're allowed to change and what you're not allowed to change. So I'm really not comfortable to say that, yeah, if we want to do it differently, we can just do it differently. The idea behind the Oregon budget law is that once a year, citizens need to wake up and pay attention to the fact there's a process happening, and you set a budget, and then there are small changes for certain kinds of situations that can happen at other times of the year, but average citizen only supposed to watch once a year to see that the budget was set, and they can be comfortable that there's no serious changes outside of Reed Year's Landing in the middle of town and stuff like that.
Which we haven't seen, so that's out.
Just one memory.
Yeah, so-
But no, it makes.
I think, we can bring that language back, in regards to the supplemental budget and what the trigger would be.
What do you mean, Allison, exactly? What do you, bring that language back? What do you?
Just so that we're clear on, Arthur read the ORS 294, but there's
It's
nuances,
294, 471.
right? There's nuances to how you would interpret that, and I think that is part of what you were speaking to as well, yeah.
And I guess, and our attorney may have a different opinion than the city attorney did, but you know, I've been lectured for many hours on what I can't do.
As I watched the back and forth on the Oregon City County Manager listserv, and they ask questions about bringing forward supplemental budgets, it sounds much less intensive than you just described.
Okay.
So getting the exact language, I think, would be
Okay, great. I mean, I think from my perspective, I feel more comfortable being tighter on personnel, having the money in contingency, provided there is a way to access that during the year that's legal and possible, but also to have, rather than saying, we're gonna give you extra for personnel, please come in under. I feel more comfortable saying, here's what we'd like to see spent on personnel, and then having you have the ability to change that for pressing circumstances. That's just my preference in terms of as the extra money gets tighter and tighter, just having that visibility. But to the degree that's legal and possible, I don't understand the details. I understand them less than I did
Right.
3 weeks ago.
You can appropriate more than we're comfortable with spending and say, but please don't spend it. Right? That's a legal thing to do.
Okay.
But then we gonna have to watch really carefully and manage that.
Okay.
You can also approve the budget to a certain percentage. You could cut it down by a percentage.
So there are many situations where you say, hey, there's a grant in here that we've applied for, so it was foreseeable, so we have to put it in the budget. We're anticipating getting this grant, so we're appropriating spending of this grant, but do not spend that money unless we actually get the grant. So you can be.
That's sort of budget
do that.
language stuff. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. How do things look to folks to meet Tuesday next week? Gives you all a little longer to hit your deadlines and some other things.
Town Tuesday, so.
Okay. And offline in terms of fun.
Yeah, town working also.
Okay.
Thursday?
I'm available Thursday.
I'm available Thursday.
I'm not available Thursday, but
Yeah, you told us that.
we have a vice chair.
That's why we got.
You were warned.
Yeah, that was- Fair enough. I'm available Thursday, so.
Okay.
And you did a really good job with the bridge budget.
No, we're out of here.
Budget done in about-
You're just saying everywhere else. State's giving us that much money. Cool. Let's go.
Does Thursday work for folks better? Okay. So Thursday from 3 to 5?
Sounds like a plan.
All right, great. Anything else before we recess? All right, the meeting's in recess.
Okay.